economic development in their home countries. I was talking to a lot of you earlier, and I expressed that I really would not like to go in the traditional form of having these questions for you, but rather give each and every one of you the chance to introduce yourself and also maybe highlight what you would love or like to continue further discussing. So I would really like to have, for everyone to have 5 minutes maybe, tops, maximum, in the very German way from my side. I will try to keep the time. So everyone in 5 minutes, just introduce yourself and let us know what is there that you would like us to focus today so that we can then enhance and continue the discussion further. So Professor Gibril, I will give the floor first to you.
Thank you so much for having us here. My name is Gibril Fall. I am professor in practice at the London School of Economics, and I run a company called GK Partners, which for 20-something years have been working in development cooperation. This is my first time in Kosovo, but I'd worked in the region. Some 10 years ago, I wrote the first diaspora strategy for the Republic of Moldova, and that strategy is just coming to an end. On the very topic of how to support entrepreneurs, diaspora ones, particularly as regards sustainable and one may say perhaps ethical and innovative enterprise. We have, I think, as a community of practitioners across the world, learned quite a bit in the past 20, 30 years. And what in the past couple of days, some of the things we've learned and heard about what Kosovo is doing is already giving us examples of good practices. The good thing with the evolution of practices is it enables new entrants to harvest. That is, the errors have already been made by other people on your behalf. So it's helpful to know what those are, avoid it, and just leap in to the sort of best possible opportunities. We heard the Deputy Minister mention today, for example, the loan facilities or loan guarantee schemes. This is particularly important for transboundary finances, because if you are in Switzerland, you may have access to local Swiss money for local projects. But if you want local money for a project overseas, unless we're talking of huge sums, it becomes a difficulty. So transboundary sort of financial facilitation, capital facilitation is one good area. Other things, originally from a small country called the Gambia in West Africa, not dissimilar to Kosovo in that it's a small country with big migration. The Export and Investment Promotion Agency of the government, we helped them create a diaspora advice desk. These are dedicated staff whose job is entirely to engage to diaspora actual and potential entrepreneurs. Sort of this direct support and direct helpline is useful because the diaspora, although they don't belong, they also come with all of the naivety and lack of understanding of local dynamics, and sometimes that makes them frustrated. So having somebody who can help you and guide you is extremely useful to have. There are other schemes as well that may be necessary, especially to push a real, genuine sort of innovation. So one thing that has, in my view, not been done much for the countries regarding diaspora investors is to purposefully design out niche areas and then go out and invite the diaspora for that. So now it's usually the first move is done by the diasporan based on their interest, their expertise and all that. But an untapped opportunity, especially in this new era of businesses of the future, be it in clean energy, be it in the emerging technologies, it would be helpful, especially small countries with big diaspora, to make a decision to focus on a niche and then go out and market it. And my final observation is just to illustrate this transformative power of diaspora entrepreneurs is, of course, given their transnational nature, is with their skills and expertise in other countries, then they're always having this mind of how do they apply it elsewhere. Some about 15 years ago, no, it's longer than that now, about 20 years ago, a Sudanese telecoms engineer who has lived almost all of his adult life in the United Kingdom and was working for the leading telecoms company that used to be called British Telecom. And when British Telecom was moving into mobile telecommunication, they had a company called Celtel. And one of their experts of engineers was the Sudanese man. And he, having seen that happen in UK, then had this extremely foolish idea that what about if we then have mobile phones all over Africa? And then it is a foolish idea because, and people told him and said, well, they don't even have electricity, they don't have landlines, you want to give them mobile phones. Long story short, that gentleman's name is Dr. Mo Ibrahim. He mortgaged his house, remortgaged his house, used his expertise, managed to raise some funds, and set up a company, similar name, called Celtel in Africa. Apart from him and another gentleman from Rwanda and Congo called Miko Ruwayatari, these are the two people who effectively brought mobile phones in Africa. And it made sure there was a technology leap. There was no need to make the mistakes and suffer the problems of landlines, so you leaped. And that has unlocked maybe trillions of dollars worth of value in the country. That's an example of migrant entrepreneurs looking at ideas that have worked in the places are and being foolish enough to want it to work in their homeland. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to give the floor to Mr. Vartan Marashlian. I hope I pronounced that correct. And I want to make sure that I also correct the organization, REPAT, that you are a co-founder of, and also here as a former deputy minister of diaspora in Armenia. Did I get that right too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Presidente, it's a great pleasure for me to be here. I'm fifth time in Kosovo. First time was in May last year, so it's very intensive, and I really enjoyed it. There are a lot of similarities with Armenia and Armenians, and I really enjoy exploring more and also sharing with my experience, because I think this is very valuable from the professional point of view, but also from the personal point of view for me. And I always feel here like home, which is quite interesting. When you travel from Armenia to here, and you feel like you're back home. So I'm actually wearing two hats because I lived outside of my country, Armenia, for a while, around 30 years. I moved back, so I'm a repatriate. I know what does it mean to be diasporan. I moved back, worked in the public sector as a deputy minister for diaspora, but then established a grassroots organization called Repat Armenia Foundation. And even my position is like very typical for diasporans between home and host country. But I would like not to concentrate so much on, our achievements as Armenia, because we, for example, have several unicorns established by American Armenians in Armenia, IT companies with capitalization of several $1 billion. Or we have Tumo Center, maybe you know about Tumo Center in Tirana, but it has been originated in Armenia and then franchised to many countries as an Armenian format of innovative education. So we have those success stories, but I think what's really missing quite often in the conversations about diaspora's investment is a clear understanding of the nature of diaspora's investments and the difference between foreign investments and diaspora's investments. And I would like to concentrate more on that. So I just wrote several things to mention, and I think it would be good to have a discussion based on that. So foreign direct investments and diaspora investments, the biggest difference is emotions. Diaspora is about emotions. It's about fears, it's about dreams, it's about challenges, it's about getting to something which is almost very difficult to measure sometimes, right? So it's about your soul, it's about something sacred in yourself. And what does a typical foreign investor does? He looks at the profit, he looks at the risk. And if he goes to a different country where the risk level is higher, he's looking for a higher profit. Diasporans are usually doing opposite. So they're ready to take a higher risk and to have a lower profit. Why? Because the major thing they do care about is impact. Impact and changing of the culture. That's why, for example, if you compare by volumes, foreign direct investments might be much higher by volumes. But in terms of impact on the country's development, smaller diaspora's investments, if they are placed in the right way, if there's a true partnership between public and private institutions on that, they will be solving very important problems of the country's development that foreign direct investors never care about. So if something happens wrong, happens in the country, foreign direct investments are the first to leave. Foreign direct diaspora investments are those to stay or even to double. So I just want to stress your attention on it. And if you really want to understand the nature of diaspora direct investments, it's very much about overcoming the reasons why people left the country. So that's why diaspora is very much interested in long-term changes in education, healthcare, in environment, infrastructures that are helping to build a society which is not looking outside of the country, is not looking in the direction of migration. So the most efficient ways of cooperation between the state and the diaspora are those cases, and unfortunately they're quite rare, when the government understands that it's a two-way road. It's not just investment from the diaspora, but also investment from the country to the diaspora. But these are different types of investments. The state has a care investment in the diaspora, which is about education, culture, sometimes safety. So if you care about your diaspora, diaspora is making pride or gratitude investments in a very generous way. You just need to figure it out, even the language you speak. Quite often we see situations when there are conferences about economic engagement of diaspora, but they are completely incompatible. The messages and people sitting in the audience, they are irrelevant to each other. They don't listen to each other. It's just the state, public institutions pitching something, and then not the same audience sitting there looking for something else. So from that point of view, I think that it's very important to have also diaspora being engaged in developing this economic relations and feeling themselves as a co-owner of the process. Then you'll be able really to benefit most from the diaspora you have. One thing to mention, if I still have time, is remittances. Quite often many states talk about remittances as investments. From my personal point of view, in a short-term run, definitely remittances help many countries to survive. But they also have a lot of backsides and negative sides, and they are definitely not investments. And sometimes they even make those problems longer. So these problems are inequality, systemic migration, supporting corruption, and low productivity of society. So all the countries who are very much relying on remittances should really think about long-term potential consequences of remittances in that sense. And the last thing which I would like to mention is that this is all, again, very typical for many states who have now diaspora being formed out of migration. I'm a part of a nation which one of the classical diasporas, like Greeks and Jews. So our first communities has been established in early medieval centuries. And we're 3 million Armenians living in Armenia, 7 million living in more than 100 countries. But especially for those nations that are starting the journey, it's very important. You need to support your migrant today in things which they really need, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. It's an attention. In order for you to be able to establish a dialogue when they become successful somewhere outside. Because if you don't do this, you are getting almost similar situations, and in many families, there's a child and parent trauma, relations, all of that stuff. It's very much about psychology. So I would fully encourage public institutions especially, because to some extent they are more responsible for it, and they are institutions, to think in depth about those issues, not technically, not transactionally, because again, relations with the diaspora, it's very much about emotional intelligence and emotions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I think you kind of ended on a perfect sentence for us to make ways to Carolyn, who's a senior researcher of social anthropology. I mean, you mentioned emotions a lot, so I think it would be great if we can hear also in your introduction about the cultural and social aspect from the anthropological aspect perspective into the ways that diasporas invest in their home countries.
Ja, Faleminderit Shum, Grenare. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here on the panel. As you said, I'm a researcher in social anthropology, and my research subject for the time being now is on migrant or diaspora entrepreneurs investing in Kosovo. So I followed it from outside, so from the perspective, from a German perspective, but being a lot in Kosovo and speaking to entrepreneurs with a diaspora background who invested. So I have a sample of 25 firms, but I also do interviews with experts, and in this occasion I also had a conversation with Lisa Gashi, and I'm very thankful for the invitation here also in this regard. Yeah, and when it comes to emotions, and here I really can directly follow up what in my observation is most important, in fact, is also trust. And trust is a strong emotion, and for economy, trust is essential because you have to plan. So I mean, for investments, it needs a time span. And so you have to foresee, you have to believe in a good future, in a belief in something is going well with your investments. And here one has to clearly say there is a gap. There's a trust gap between EU countries and Kosovo. So, I mean, there are hierarchies, not just Kosovo, it's the whole region. I mean, the West Balkan region, there are, I mean, it can also be very critically seen that there are hegemonic power structures working on, and from the Western point of view, Kosovo is either unknown or it is kind of looked at with low trust, especially when it comes to investments, because people still think of the war and now the conflict, ongoing conflict with Serbia and so on. And then the question, yeah, what happens to my money when I invest it? On the other hand, of course, it's also a very small market. So then it's a question, why investing in such a small market? And I think here migrant entrepreneurs, diaspora entrepreneurs play a very important role. First of all, opening the market, the Kosovo market, to the EU, so in that way spanning in a larger market, and then creating the ties. And Lisa Gashi said the migrant generally are the ambassadors, but I would say migrant entrepreneurs are even the stronger ambassadors, or one of those, because they, in order to connect the country, the economic sphere across borders, you need to create this trust relations, and this is what they're doing. And not just necessarily by investing, but maybe also being in a company and opening the market by establishing ties to others. And when we look at trust, it's always telling the story otherwise, giving a new vision of Kosovo. And I think this is also what the government is doing now. I mean, with this conference, we are all brought here in order to get a new vision of Kosovo, and I think it's very important and very powerful. And it's also organizations like Yermin, this business associations. So there are lots of organizations working in the same direction, and here, of course, these migrant entrepreneurs are an important building stone, but acting in a cross country environment, which is so impactful. And when it comes to telling the story otherwise, I think it's very important just not to say it is what one entrepreneur told me once, it is Chinese prices, I mean, for labor with German quality, so that you can produce the same things for a much cheaper thing. But it's what like Speaks now came up with, a slogan, and this is a migrant entrepreneur company here in call center, made in Kosovo. I mean, having a slogan to say, no, we are not mimicking what is done in the West, but we stand for our quality, for our products. But in order to do that, maybe it needs a certain size, and definitely it needs, so to say, a good embeddedness of attention, a joint force. You cannot do it on your own, so you need to join force with others. And I think what migrant entrepreneurs do, like Lisa Garshi and the Ministry for Foreign Affairs and Diaspora did now, is bringing other people in here and showing the business, letting people speak to the employees, showing around in the country, maybe going for a drink and so on. And this is creating this trustworthy relations on which businesses are built. And in that way, I would say business, in fact, is a social science. And it's a very human science, so to say, science, or a very human endeavor. And here, I think migrant entrepreneurs are very successful here. Thank you.
I mean, I have to say that that was very German and very on point timely-wise. Thank you so much. Our next panelist is Citrime Dervisholi, who I've had the honor to actually know quite a few times during our works here. So I'm very much honored to give you the floor and have you introduce yourself and some of your engagements currently.
Thank you, Grenora. Yes, great to see you again and to meet in this format. Today I'm representing the prefab cluster, which means prefabricated construction cluster. It's pretty new established association or cluster in Kosovo. We have been established in October last year, and currently we do have 20 companies in our membership. And in those 20 companies, 3 of them are diaspora-led entrepreneurs. And the biggest one, the greenhouse company, is diaspora-led business. So I really do see the diaspora entrepreneurs or diaspora community as a key agent for the economic development of Kosovo. And maybe just to elaborate a bit the industry, it's quite innovative industry in Kosovo, and not only because this industry is becoming very attractive and with a very speed dynamism. We are evolving and also following the let's say the best global business practices. And this cluster is composed not only from wood companies. I mean, it's quite mixed. It's metal, concrete, and cement, which diversifies, let's say, the community that is inside our cluster. The forum like Ulpiana forum, for us as a cluster is very, very welcome forum, because it's kind of bridging our member companies with diaspora community, and also another platform or mechanism that Ministry of Foreign Affairs is applying and doing a very good job is organizing kind of business diaspora forums in different European countries. And just a few days ago, we have been in the Netherlands, where we have a very vibrant community there, which one of our companies managed to get a huge contract in the Netherlands to build modular houses next year in the Netherlands. So Forums like this and discussions or platforms like this are quite useful for the community, and not only for our industry, but also for private sector as a whole. So indeed, I do see the diaspora as a very, very key player in bridging us and helping Kosovo companies to penetrate to international markets. Because if we do see the statistical data or figures of our export, mainly we do export to German-speaking countries, and this is thanks to the diaspora, that they supported the industry from the beginning to establish our, let's say, our presence in those countries, and now we are expanding our portfolio also to other countries like Italy, France, and recently Iceland. Also, Iceland are asking modular houses or prefabricated houses from Kosovo. So this is a signal that the trust and the image is increasing of the Kosovo companies, not only of these sectors, because this sector, let's say, it's quite diversified, which means that we have to cooperate with other sectors in order to deliver our final products. So yes, indeed, I mean, diaspora, it's, I would say, a very vital part of our daily business in Kosovo.
Thanks a lot, Suprema. Now I have the honor to give the floor to Cesar Vargas from the EU Latin Business Forum, all the way from Mexico. We're very honored to have you here, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being here. The fact that you are here listening to this very interesting topic already demonstrates that in Kosovo there is a desire to improve things, to change the narrative. So I think that's very important, that the fact that every one of us is here, and all my colleagues in the panel, and that the Ulpiana Forum exists, it's already the beginning of the change of this narrative. And I would like to start, before introducing myself, to continue building this topic about the feeling. How important is the feeling that we have with some countries? With Mexico, for example, I would like to ask the public, which of you have been in Mexico? Have you been in Mexico? 1, 2, just a few, 3 over there, very good. Did you see that everyone was killing each other over there in the streets? Hopefully not, I hope. So that's a demonstration, because every time I met someone, they have in their mind the series of Netflix, Narcos. So you're from Mexico? Narcos. And that's sadly a brand in my country that is limited the opportunities, because often in my work, when I try to bring business to Mexico or investment, I can see in the faces of the person that I'm talking with, they are like, yeah, but I don't want to get kidnapped. Yeah, but they don't say that because, of course, a polite framework. But this is just to highlight how important is the brand and the story, the narrative of the countries. So I think it's important to build that. It's a simple example of how a problem, because there is a security problem in Mexico, can consume and destroy it or make problems in the whole narrative of a country that is the #1 partner with the US, is the 7th, 16th economy in the world, and it's a booming economy that is leading economically, for example, with car industries, with planes. We're making helicopters, planes in Mexico, but you don't think on that. So that's just to put the emphasis on this, how important is the story we tell about Kosovo. It needs to change. And I think I want to see Kosovo more related with innovation, with skills. And for that, I think that's why we are here. And for that, I think we all should be proud and try to continue working on that. Just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Cesar Vargas. Yes, I'm from Mexico, but I've been living in Belgium from 12 years. I am founder of an organization that is pushing to get the European Union to look back in the other side of the Atlantic, but not to the US, but a little bit south of the border, not just in Mexico, but in Latin America, where you have huge economies like Brazil, that is a potential agriculturally, industrially, Argentina, Chile with mining, and Mexico with industry. And I face often this challenge, but because I'm from a diaspora, I'm willing to take the risk that you were talking exactly, that maybe it will be easier for me just to get a job as a translator in the European Parliament, and just like, I'm gonna get my job as translator and go easy with life. But because I have the desire and the nostalgia, and my family is in Mexico, my friends are in Mexico, I'm part of that narrative. I'm willing to go further to maybe have struggles extra because I have that feeling that you were sharing with investment. So my story is the following. When I arrived in Belgium, I was speaking English, but in Belgium, the labor market is mostly in French or Dutch. So you can just get so far in one moment. So that's why I decided to try to start something for myself. But I didn't know what. And in one of the diaspora meetings that the Mexican embassy was organizing, because the Mexican embassy organized every year a meeting for highly educated Mexicans living abroad, when they could just come and meet each other, I met people with whom I start a business. So that's a simple example, or something the government can do, meetings with sectors and highly skilled people. I can imagine in Kosovo, the Kosovo diaspora in Germany, for example, that maybe the embassy organized an event related with chemistry industry, and let them cook, let them meet each other, because people are really creative. People, if you give them the freedom, they are capable to get with amazing ideas that can be sustainable in the long term because they feel they are their own. And I maybe a little bit more skeptical with the government leading development. I think more in a liberal approach because I think the bureaucracy system is almost impossible to know everything. And in that sense, the market can be more creative. So I will say, I will invite Kosovo to create these platforms where highly educated Kosovians can meet and bring innovation. And that will be, for me, a simple recommendation to do. Then the fact that the success is that I'm here. So thank you very much.
Well, to be honest, I think this chair, the fact that it's lower, it's a perfect, example on how it feels very surreal to be sitting here with you all today. And after hearing all of you, I just feel very bad that we have such a short time, because I want to talk each and everything to every one of you. But given from what all of you, mentioned in your opening statements, introduction, I would just like to maybe guide a question, or maybe picking up on what you mentioned more. And Professor Gibro, you talked a lot about finding niche areas, for the diaspora to lead their investments and so on. So maybe coming up from your work, as a professor, but also a lot of your engagements with policy and strategies and so on, what are some policies or frameworks that you have seen that have worked to effectively mobilize diaspora entrepreneurs for sustainable development?
Just picking up what Cesar says, governments are not generally good in business. That's why even their own enterprises tend to fail, and the taxpayer end up subsidizing it. But what they are absolutely essential for, and you know it when there's an absence of government, is to create the framework and the regulatory institutions so that the best possible enterprise can happen. So sometimes the way I tell government is, even if you are not able to help the diaspora, do not hinder them. And that talks to the liberal approach. That is, try out things. And I'll give another example. I don't know whether any of you have visited Morocco. If you have the chance, go and visit Morocco. It's a good tourist destination anywhere. Many of the cities and institutions, their infrastructure is better than what you see in Western Europe. Yeah? They have a TGV, the Très Grand Vitesse trains from Casablanca to Rabat and to Tangier. The country has changed. I found, to my utter surprise, a few years ago, that in UK-Morocco trade, UK was in deficit in two particular areas, automobile and aeronautics. And I actually couldn't believe it. I have to double check to see whether it's true. That net Morocco export more to the UK in this field. And I started looking into it. If you take just the aeronautics industry, it was almost entirely diaspora. What you had was Moroccan executives in the big companies in America who then took the risk, took the chance to say, let's try this out in our country. But crucially, for the change to happen, the government, one, did not hinder it, but then did something very good and look at, say, how do I help it? By giving incentives, giving enabling environment. Almost all governments have investment promotion incentives. So FDI, one of the criticism for foreign direct investments is, especially poor or developing countries, would put excessive incentives on this with tax holidays and all of it, to the extent that even though that heavy investment comes in, but the results, the profits, the surpluses are repatriated. And as Vatan said, there's something distinctly different with diaspora enterprise in that the economic term we use in diaspora finance, that they are counter-cyclical in nature. That is, they would come whatever the situation is, and they would circulate more locally before they leave. And in fact, very little of it ever leaves. So it is known, and this idea of the circulation of funds, it's true everywhere. It's a well-established principle. If you set up a business somewhere, and people spend locally, and it moves around, you create more wealth. And the diaspora finance does that. So what governments do is create that enabling facility. And these days, they don't have to be shy about it. If you take 15 years ago, they may be shy about it because there was a sort of competition between DDI, diaspora direct investment, and FDI. But now, every country policy have moved to a level where it can be stated categorically, and we saw it during COVID, when there's difficulty and problem. In fact, you mentioned the remittances. We've been working on this for years, and we knew that as diaspora finance, it's counter-cyclical. But when COVID hit, because we've not seen that before, we all panicked. In fact, World Bank came and said that remittance figures would collapse by 20%. The government of Switzerland, the government of United Kingdom, World Bank set up a task force. I was giving technical advice to it, and it expanded as to what are we going to do for when the collapse happened. Guess what? It didn't collapse. And that counter-cyclicality is important. Thank you.
Once again, it just feels like I want to continue every conversation down to the last point of it, but I think what I would love to pick up on is, Martin, you talked a lot about the emotional aspect of the diaspora direct investments. And Professor Gabriel talked about a lot what governments, if they don't do anything, at least they can do no harm. I think you also mentioned that there are some similarities between our countries. So maybe it would be interesting for us to also hear about, talk about, discuss is the similarities between the countries that go through conflict, post-conflict, or transition. Because I feel like, at least in the example of the case of Kosovo, I think our Deputy Minister, Ms. Lisa Goshi, mentioned it earlier this morning, the emotional affect and how that supported economically and politically the country to prosper. So I don't know if you would maybe have any example or something that you can relate to when it comes to the emotional tie that then leads to the financial and direct investments in our countries.
Right, so you want me to continue talking about emotions? I think the fact, especially with the smaller nations who are facing some existential threats, it's again, I'll take to parent and children relations. It doesn't matter how complicated the relations are between kids and parents, even if kids are very dissatisfied or traumatic experience with parents, they will still take care of their parents. But the fact, if they have healthy relations, they'll care more. It will be more harmonic relations, also with grandchildren, etc. But nevertheless, usually kids do not quit. Do not leave them alone. That's the thing. So, but so the same with countries. Maybe I'll be too frank with you, but for example, let's compare Kosovo with Albania. I can compare it because unfortunately we've lost Karabakh. We was Armenian, Asian populated land. So we kind of lost our Kosovo. But when we had Karabakh, we have, you know, a pride that we've managed for many centuries, after the many centuries, to take back some of our territories and to protect our people living there, right, against a very serious aggressor. And psychologically, many Armenians in the diaspora, even if they had a mistrust towards Armenia, they were fully into this Karabakh to support, promote, fund, reconstruct. So the same here. If it's a small nation, if there are some survival elements, so this kind of parent and kids stuff works well. But for the states, it's very important not to overplay with it, because if you overplay with emotions, it brings to an opposite effect. But to take it aside, to a more practical stuff, I'll just tell a couple of things which I think are also important to take into consideration. Quite often the governments are pitching for investments. Please invest in agriculture, invest in ecotourism, invest in this and that. If you don't live here, to do a passive investment is a huge issue. Buying a flat is not an investment. It's taking care of your family, your kids, your future. It's not an investment. But if you want someone to invest in the industry, you need to create special funds, like Israel did when they had to create thousands, hundreds of thousands new jobs for Soviet Jews who left the country. So they created Yozma Fund. Yozma Fund's idea was a venture capital fund which was bringing private investments from the diaspora, matching it with the government funds at a very low rate because they were invested in startups in IT sector. But the government said, I'm sharing with you the risks, but in 5 years' time, you will be able to buy my share, the state share, almost at a nominal price. So this was an extremely important initiative which provided people with jobs. It boosted the venture capital market, and actually it brought a lot of foreign investments too, to the country which is unstable, permanently in the wars. Right? But let me bring you another example from the Armenia's case. We have repatriates from USA. I mean, and Armenia in Soviet times was very strong in engineering. That's now IT is booming again. And he was an engineer as National Instruments. He brought National Instruments to Armenia, a branch established in Armenia, and moved himself. So he said there's a 377 model. And I think many of our nations can apply this to ourselves, just change the figures. So the first three is 3 million people living in Armenia. Let's hence that they are all engineers. The second figure is 7. 7 is 7 million people, Armenians, living in more than 100 countries. So these are our salesmen. And the last 7 is 7 billion people living in the world. This is a market. So the governments can both work on making passive investments easier, but also in giving certain trends and support system to promote export from the country. And if it happens by the diaspora, it will take place in any case, but it won't be as effective, as impactful, and as scaleful as possible. So here is where there's a natural public and private partnership. And if you speak the right language with the right people in the diaspora, it's really not so difficult to do. But it's again about trust. You can very quickly lose the trust, but it takes a long time to recover it and to take it to the level that brings results.
Thank you so much. And it's almost as we're doing it on purpose, we're kind of using this, keyword from the next speaker to kind of move on, because I either ways wanted to catch up on the word trust that Carolyn mentioned earlier, and it had to do a lot about the trust in the economy and the trust in the government. And I think maybe coming up from your research and your analysis, also ask how can, beyond the governments and the labor markets and the economy, how can also social networks within the diaspora and in-home countries be leveraged to kind of enhance this impact of the diaspora-led entrepreneurship initiatives? So maybe looking more into the social factors that go into it, the trust. I mean, if we do come from the Kosovo example, we have a lot of narratives changing constantly when it comes to diaspora, whether it is remittances, whether it is business-led ideas, whether it is whatever it is, narratives on them. But how do you think that these social networks can all in all, again, impact that trust, the big word here?
Yeah, thank you. I think what I really observe here in the conference, but generally also in the country, is there's a lot of trust in the diaspora. So that the diaspora will change it and will kind of bring Kosovo forward. And on the one hand, I completely agree to that. And as I said, it's really a brilliant force, so many engaged people. But on the other hand, I also think that it's really quite a responsibility you give to the diaspora, and it should also be questions that why do you expect so much from them? I mean, from people from outside, and why don't you trust more in yourself, so to say, and also bring state actors more in. It's not meant as a criticism on what is done yet, but only as a food for thought what maybe has to be done even more. Because, as I said, what is going on is this kind of telling the story, changing the story. It is, I think it's successful. But still, when I see that migrant entrepreneurs investing, and they investing, I mean, successfully and so on, there are limits. And so people are still leaving. And why are they leaving? They leave because the state is, in a way, they might get, in part of the jobs they might get a good salary, but maybe not good enough. But others leave not because of the salary, but they leave because of healthcare system, education, and so on and so on. And I just think that migrant entrepreneurs are not the right people to address these questions. They might come in, but they cannot take the lead there. And I see even that in part they take the lead and they say, okay, again, this example of call centers, because they are very prominent migrant enterprises here, and also prominent in the number of people they employ, and also prominent in the scale of salaries, that they give good salaries. So in that way, they are those most likely letting people stay here, because, I mean, they stay because they want to stay. Now they have the possibility to leave, but, and I'm very grateful that they have the possibility. I think it's absolutely fair. Everyone should have the right to leave, but even better if they have the wish to stay. And for that, for the wish to stay, it means that you need to build a state in which people like to live. And next to economic reasons, there are a lot of social factors. And education is one, and again, to return to the call centers now, they say in order to get good employees, good trained employees, we need German, because German is the market here, and so far that it's a training by themselves, more or less, so they train their employees, but they say, okay, but it's really costly, so it should be the state kind of introducing, for example, now German in school and so on. Of course, one can question does it make sense to be so market-oriented? But on the other hand, maybe yes, if this is the main market and the Kosovo market is small, it needs to be a kind of an embedded market in the larger European region, I would say. So same for healthcare. I mean, there are so many things. I think the state really has to take responsibility, and they can take migrant money in, maybe not these entrepreneurs building up enterprises, but others more in this philanthropic ways. And I think here Mexico would be a good example to say, if you invest in this infrastructure, I mean, just give money for it, I mean, the state could double it, for example, in order not just to take care of the economy, but also of the infrastructure, and then really creating a society in which people not just earn enough money, but also have good healthcare and so on and so on. And in the end, yeah, they might be linked to many places of the world, but they do not have to leave the country, or only when they want to travel and connect to other Albanians and others, different citizens of the world.
Thank you so much. Actually, this relates a lot to the question that I was thinking about asking Sutima, and also I think the current trends happening in Kosovo. Not only do we just recently this year get visa liberalization, so for this first time our people are free to move and see and explore, but from what we're seeing in the fields, or when we're having these research on why people are leaving, it's not anymore about pay at the end of the month. It has a lot to do about safety at work. It has a lot to do about conditions to raise your family. So a lot of social reasons beyond the financial gain on it. So I feel like this is then leads us to another question, what is when we talk about diaspora entrepreneurs or diaspora direct investments. So how can we, because we cannot stop people from moving, you know, we are all working on that principle. So how maybe when we think about this mobility, this chain of movement, if we are seeing people moving for better, you know, conditions, better social factors of their life and so on, what is the, you think, I guess my question directly to you, Sutima, would be, what do you think in your experience are the sectors in Kosovo where Kosovo has the most potential, in this case directly for diaspora-led innovations from these entrepreneurs? Because we already are seeing a lot of foreign now migrant workers coming to Kosovo to replace the jobs that the local employees cannot find. But when we think on sector level and entrepreneurship level, what do you think that there are sectors where Kosovo could shine?
Beyond prefab.
Yeah.
Prefab, undoubtedly. For next 10 years, yes, I'm pretty sure on that. Seeing the global dynamism and global trends for the next 10 years, the construction, modular construction will be on top. And Kosovo companies are penetrating very safely into the global market thanks to the quality that they assured from the beginning. Yes, I would say are almost all sectors where Kosovo still needs the international and foreign expertise, diaspora, including diaspora expertise, because in the Netherlands, I mean, I saw a very well-prepared generation, young generation, that we could bring them here, or just to share expertise and knowledge, maybe not necessarily bringing them here, but also sending our people for a short time there, just getting new practices and new knowledge. I would say that prefab, yes, of course, as one of the main sectors. ICT and agriculture, especially the rural agriculture, tourism agriculture, it's quite with a lot of potential that could shine in the next few years in Kosovo. It's a bit unfortunate to see, let's say, this big amount of remittances going in the real estate, which is kind of, I would say, dead capital. And usually, I mean, we classify this as a positive numbers of FDI, which in fact we as Kosovo should, the government in this case, should focus public policies on how to invest in productive sectors. I mean, real estate could bring money, but it's not productive in the long term. Yeah, exactly. So we could be proud on this. I mean, bringing a lot of money from diaspora, but when we see where this money are going, we cannot predict long-term economic development and economic sustainability if we count only on diaspora remittances. We have somehow to allocate this big amount of remittances in those sectors where Kosovo is shining right now. ICT is also a good sector. But in a conversation with some ICT entrepreneurs in Kosovo, when we asked them if Kosovo would be able to send 600 developers in Poland, for example, they said, no, I mean, we don't have capacity. So also we can be proud with ICT sector, but if we see the productivity of the sector, I mean, then we see that we are just thinking on a short term, let's say making a bit shiny of this sector in a very short term. But if we see, are we developing the human capacities within the sectors? I would say no, unfortunately. So we currently we do not have public policies that foresee the long-term human development capacities. So, and this is, let's say, very necessary, including the prefab industry. For example, we didn't feel at all the visa-lib effects because the sector is quite stable. The salaries are, let's say, pretty good if we compare with other sectors, including health insurances, etc. So, but if we compare, I mean, other sectors that we have to do with them, we have to do also with HoReCa. I mean, hotels, tourism, restaurants, with construction, with classical construction, not modular. I mean, we are somehow connected with other sectors. So we cannot survive alone in the market if other partners, I mean, are not at the same level as the prefab industry. So in a way, the slow development of other sectors can hinder also the prefab industry. We are shining right now, but I'm not sure if we will shine, especially in the human capacities, in the next few years. Even that I said in the beginning that in the next 10 years, this sector will bring a lot of money to Kosovo. But what about people? I mean, I don't want that kind of scenario that we will be forced to take people from outside, like engineers for machineries, like engineers for automation, like engineers for any kind of specific machine, to do that instead of Kosovo people. So, I mean, we have to think on this mainly because we do suffer also for human, let's say, skilled labors, especially for the automated machines, that this industry is quite, let's say, demanding on this area.
Thanks so much, Trima. Again, a lot of things we could pick up and talk about it, but now maybe just shifting a little bit. There's this author I really like, Gloria Anzaldúa, and I used to read her a lot during my master's studies because she writes a lot about this identity of living in la mestiza, so in the middle. So it elaborates a lot about the identity of, specifically she was writing about migrant, so American Latin migrant women living in America, and how there's not one singular identity but very specific to them. So I do share the belief that a lot of migrants or diaspora communities are very much different in their backgrounds and their experiences and so on. But then again, in the end, they do share one common identity too. So the idea of being part of a diaspora community. So my question to you, I guess, would be, what do you think that, how could some sort of collaboration between different regions, because we may very easily think that, you know, Latin America and Europe are very much distinct and so, but how do you think collaboration between communities or societies between these different regions could create some greater impact? Like their commonalities, their differences and so on could impact some greater development.
Yes, definitely. Being a migrant is a personal experience, first of all. You love it, you hate it. You have a love-hate relation with the country that you are. You love some things, like there are things I love about Belgium, that when I'm in Mexico, I miss the fries, I miss the beer, I miss everything. And then you hate things, no? You hate the weather, no? You hate other things. So definitely it's a personal level. And in the community level, there are many ways to cooperate. You have, for example, the cultural level, that is a basic one, and it's where the heart of the people is. And in the economic level, that is what this panel is, for creating jobs, you have to talk about value change. You have to talk about the industries of the future. That is exactly what you are saying. It's very important to understand that building the skill capacities for the labor market is not something that you can do in 1 year, because you can decide now that maybe we want to be Kosovo to be the next big thing with artificial intelligence. Okay, we need to start to invest in engineers. These engineers are going to take, what, 5 years of studying? And then it's a plan of 10 years. So you cannot just decide like that. So it has to be a plan that at least the main parties have, in political parties, they have in common. Because if in February another party comes and destroy everything, then what is the point of planning, no? So it has to be like a basic, like a vision on horizon. For example, in Mexico, we used to have a more protectionist approach against the United States, and in the 90s we decided to change, and that was left from right. And now we are going to defend that in front of Donald Trump, and let's see how far we can get, of course. But it's the countries united with that. That's why I'm optimist about it, because left and right, they want to defend this open market that Mexico has had for the last 20, 30 years. So in the level of economic, the cooperation, I think the key word is value chain. If I were the Prime Minister of Kosovo, I will try to focus most of the resources in one next big thing. I will go for IA, genetics, or data. That will be my humble opinion. That, because going for industry, manufacturing can be, of course, but then you have to compete with Poland, for example, that they are really well established, especially with car industry. That is the main industry with more jobs, at least in Europe. But there are many things that are going to come with the next technological revolution. One of my favorite authors in Mexico, Bolívar Echeverría, also my professor, he used to discuss a lot about modernity. What is modernity? And for him, the key word of modernity is technology. And modernity is basically everything we do to adapt to that, to internet, cameras, cell phones. So now we have cell phone and change everything. Change politics, change human relations, change everything. But it's not going to stop with telephones. It's going to come next thing. So that is a constant open window for countries like Mexico or Kosovo that are not yet developed to try to jump for the next big thing. China has just demonstrated that with the electric cars. They have a long-term policy that we are going to be the best in electric cars, and now Volkswagen is crying for this. They are losing the game, and that's a long-term investment because they, and it's not that they are perfect, because they invest, if you actually see what the Chinese did, they invest like in 10 things, and one succeed. So it's not like it's going to be perfect, but I think in those value change, you can find cooperation, win-win games, where Kosovo can find win-win partners, sometimes with someone that used to be your enemy. And that's literally the case of Mexico and the United States. We're now partners. We used to fight for Texas, and now we share it with value chain. So it can be the future. if you focus in the next modern technology revolution, but you need to do it thinking in 10 years. That's very important. It's not something that I'm going to make a next generation of engineers for this decade. For the next year, it has to be for 1 decade. But definitely there is room for cultural cooperation, but for win-win relations, I will go for value chains, and I will focus in the value chains of the future.
Thank you so much. I think we've unfortunately come to the last round of sort of say maybe reflections, because we talked a lot about, and I think we all here know and understand that we cannot talk diaspora without talking about emotions, without talking about that personal humanly nature to all of it, whether it is the human connection to the homeland, whether it is the financial contribution, the remittances, and we can discuss a lot whether the remittances do good or harm and whatever levels they do. But as you said very correctly, so says that we are now facing a different world. We're facing a world of digitalization, and we also need to think about not only diaspora but also the local communities and how do we react to it. But we only have time for just maybe a last remark from your side. So maybe you can close your reflection on a different note, but maybe we can, what I would like to hear everyone maybe is the opinion on how do we see this new world of digitalization or the moving forward affecting also the diaspora, maybe shifting this emotional connection, and what is one key action that you, from your position, point of view, see, whether it is governments, whether it is businesses, whether it is local communities, doing to maintain and increase this engagement. So maybe one key action that you believe could help support, increase, and enhance this engagement to continue and strengthen.
Well, I don't fully agree that that change would happen, especially when it comes to enterprises. Mm-hmm. You know, in business, we use the word even venture as a business, that you started a venture. Venture is a migration word. There is a very strong link between moving, migration, risk-taking, and business. That is why it is not by chance that migrants, not the diaspora, migrants, say, in the United States, are responsible for disproportionately high number of successful businesses. There's well-established studies by PwC and McKinsey that proves that. Now, when we talk of but business business is difficult. So when we talk about diaspora investment, we're not talking of diaspora. We're talking of a small percentage, that is the diaspora entrepreneurs. And we're not talking of regulated finance. We're talking of the entrepreneur where they are actively involved. And that one, there is a dynamism there that I have the feeling will always be there, because it's intricately linked to that bit about movement, about connections. So what countries need to do is changing circumstances to keep your eye on the ball. So the circumstances are changing, but the ball remains the same, is to keep an eye on that. And we've seen it so many places and so many different sectors. In recent times, for example, another illustration still linked to this market is the business opportunities that now we live with, that the diaspora have sort of created. One wouldn't have noticed it. I'll give you one of the biggest businesses in money, in remittances, is Western Union. Yeah, Western Union. When it was set up, they were still about migrants and diaspora. About what? Sending messages. It was a telegram company. That's the important thing. The ball is what? Sending messages. So when circumstances change, telephony have taken over telegrams. They could have died, but they didn't. Now sending money becomes the important thing. So it remains a business. You're from Germany, one example. When emails came, we knew that the post would suffer. I'm from the United Kingdom. Our post office is suffering, big trouble everywhere, almost except in Germany, because they kept an eye on the ball. And what did Deutsche Post did? They invested in, when emails increase, we would do parcels and we would do packages. We'll do Amazon, as it were. And they invested in what? DHL. So the ball will not change. The scenario changes, and that is true, in my view, with diaspora.
What I really love about this panel is as if we are moving the same topic, but looking different perspectives, but adding to each other's what everyone has said. Again, I'll try to come from a different angle, but quite practical, because I'll talk about Armenia's experience. I think what's really missing for the countries who are kind of surviving and nations who used to survive is long-term thinking, is planning, is reverse engineering. So what has happened 25 years ago, a group of diasporan Armenians, well established, they established Armenia 2020 project, which later on became a competitiveness foundation, supported by the government, but it was a public-private initiative. So they tried to understand and to create different scenarios for Armenia's development, different parameters, demographic, economic, political, military, in order for the nation to, to sustain, to develop. And it was a very interesting exercise, because till now, most of the governments, they think about today, maximum tomorrow, but not about 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time, the goals that can be shared by the nation, and all people of the same nation can play different roles with a bigger goal. But as a side effect, in a good sense, of that, theoretical, it seems to be theoretical exercise, was that they decided to understand what are the sectors that should be developed in Armenia today. And not just IT, but what specific subsectors have the competitive advantage and can be developed in tourism, in IT, in agriculture. And we had a lot of success stories based on that. For example, one of the diasporan Armenians with a group of other friends, they built a huge roadway in the southern part of Armenia to a beautiful monastery called Tatev, 10th century monastery. And what has happened? It had only 3,000 visitors per year, and it became more than 100,000 visitors per year. So they've invested in something which a lot of other villagers and around surrounding cities benefited from, because it brought to a boost. So it's not the investment, foreign direct investments, but it's exactly the type of diaspora direct investment that helps. To increase the competitive advantages, to increase the culture, to bring it to a next level. So if we look at small countries like us, we will never be able to achieve what USA is achieving, because the gap will be increasing, the technological gap, developments, the scales are very different. So if we go in algebraic progression, it's always Achilles and the turtle stuff. But if we use diaspora in the right way, we can go in the geometrical progression. Because there are certain gaps, technological, knowledge-based. If you write the right people, you form the right partnership. If you make diaspora co-owner of the initiative, if you share with the diaspora with the political and economic power in the right way, and there are many ways to do it without losing full control, you are really able to do miracles. And I truly believe in this, and there are several good stories about this. A lot of failures, but again, the failures are mostly because the sides are not frank enough, and they are not committed enough, and they do not truly believe in what can be achieved. And if you believe, if you do things right, if you create trust, if you invest your time in relations and prove to be trustful, believe me, a lot of things are possible.
I think generally Kosovo is a very vibrant society and a very creative society, and I think there are various reasons for it. One, it is because it's such a young society, it's the youngest one, and youth brings innovation, they have a new worldview, and they, so while Germans grapple with mobile phones, Kosovo's already had it all. So, and I think this, the use of mobile phones are even more widespread than in Germany, for example. It's not just based on the young generation, but definitely also. And also I think it's because it's such a connected society, because of this huge diaspora, and they are not just in German-speaking countries, but all over the world. And I think by bringing different worldviews together, you create something new. And in order to when you create something new, you will also kind of come up with new projects, new market strategies, and so on. And here I see, and this is because last time I didn't really answer so much, I think these connections Kosovars keep are really extremely important. And I do not see them fading. And I think it's very interesting that the second generation is, when you look at these migrant entrepreneurs, this is not just first generation, but those being born abroad, raised abroad, they reconnect and they come with, I mean, they are educated abroad, they come here with ideas, but, and I find it very important, they are not just implementing their ideas, but they learn from what is here. And so they, and I think this exchange is so important. And I think to build on these networks, this is for me very fundamental. And I think one very important message here is also that don't be afraid to lose your culture, because I mean it is very important to educate in language and so on, but I see that those most integrated in Germany are the most active here. So this means that being integrated doesn't mean at the same time to lose identity, but you can have both identities and you can be an over-provider, so to say, and a multi-developer, and by having this multiple identities. And maybe as a very last point, because often this diaspora business and diaspora in itself is seen so much rooted in ethnic identities, and it might be true, but don't forget that here in Kosovo there are not just Albanians, but there are also other minorities and other nations, and they also have diaspora, and I find it very important also to exchange with them, to integrate them also. Speaking about Serbs, about Gorani, about Croats, about Turkish members, they all have diasporas, and I think that also, I mean, just building ties in between those diasporas might be fruitful, and I was thankful also here to hear Croatian, so that so on the floor, so because this should also be, I mean, like Serbian, but I think these are now different languages, but I think it would be good, if this would be heard more here, because also for the economy, when you look at that, there are still strong economic ties between Serbia and Kosovo, so it seems like that the economy can blend out politics much easier. And now the ban has been lifted for this, I think that a prosperous nation needs to have good links to the neighbor, and not just from Germany to Kosovo, but also in the neighborhood. So also think of these ties. Thanks.
I'm just going to quickly interrupt the jump. Sorry, Sitrima, but you mentioned second generation and the idea of this generation coming and not only implementing their ideas, but also learning. And I just feel a need that I need to shout out the CDF program, the Citizen Diplomacy Fellowship, girls and boys, women and men who not only, in my opinion, are one of the best programs we have developed, but are doing such an amazing job to make Ulpiana happen. So I think they are a perfect example of not only the second, but also third generation of coming back, learning, contributing, and being the best example of our diaspora abroad. Oh yeah, that was the whole idea. Sorry, Sitrima, the floor is yours.
Before joining the cluster, I used to work for a long time in the government. and then after government I joined German Chamber of Commerce and then the cluster. From this perspective, I do see as a very vital element the cooperation, strong and active cooperation between the government, private sector and diaspora, plus the academia. I mean, those four, let's say, parts or vital elements are very crucial in order to function any kind of initiative. Being a public official, I mean, it's not easy. You always know that you know the best and you know everything. But when you invite the private sector in your office or you go to them to ask for any kind of initiative, I mean, you see how much is necessary the communication, the consultation between these actors. And I really want to see, I mean, this kind of cooperation to be further strengthened by the government and to do that, let's say, in continuation, any kind of consultation about different public policies, about different laws. The second is about economic diplomacy. I mean, this could be another factor that could foster the cooperation and could unlock the potential that Kosovo's economy can provide. We know that we are quite vibrant and resilient people. When I used to work in the German Chamber of Commerce, we used to host many different German delegations, potential investors that came to explore the Kosovo market. Usually they first went to Belgrade, Skopje, Tirana, and then Pristina, most of the times were, let's say, the last destination. And the main sentence of the German people, German potential investors, was that we never saw quite a resilient people like in Kosovo living in this survival mode and saying no to any of the jobs that given to them. So I think that we have to use this kind of positive spirit that we have as entrepreneurs, plus having in mind the fact that we as people have very entrepreneurship spirit. I mean, we are risky people because of course, we used to live in survival mode for many generations. That's why we have this kind of survival mode within us. And I think that we have to use this in a positive aspect, always in the sense of using our best and our potential that is within us and within our people that are living abroad. Thank you.
Well, it has been a pleasure to share this panel with all of you and also for the public here. Yeah, difficult to say. I think you have said most of the recommendations I was thinking. I will maybe just highlight two, one in the micro level and one in the macro and micro level. In the micro level, I would say trust. Not just look for the trust, but trust in your people. Trust in your diaspora. Create the platforms where they can meet. The skills are there. There are amazing Kosovians over there. There are Dua Lipas everywhere, so in every industries. So the Kosovo government has to create a platform where they can meet and they can create. So in the micro level, trust in your people. You want them to trust you, you need to trust them. And if you trust them, they will start to see you as a partner. So not micromanage them. Just if you want to lead your economy in one way, it has to be very broad terms. And then the creativity is going to come from the people in the fields because they know better their business than someone in an office can know. So trust in the people in the micro level. And in the big terms, how to change that, continue changing the narrative of how the world looks Kosovo with events like this. And focus in your potential partners in the European Union. Us, we work constantly in the Brussels bubble, and there's many things you can do there to get the recognitions for the countries that are still there, help to the admission process, and to participate in some EU funds. So I would like to see more Kosovians in Brussels improving that. So change the narrative and trust in your people. And the last one, trust, is the last maybe recommendation is get help get partners, like the Euro Latin Business Forum. So hire us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think we are about 8 minutes, late, but we did start 10 minutes later. So in my, very Kosovan German, I'm going to use those a minute left to do a closing. It was truly an honor to have you all speak here. I do feel conditioned, however, in such, so I do feel that the best conversations and ideas and exchanges are done in the, if you're a smoker outside or a coffee or in the networking events. So I do truly agree that this is a great opportunity to meet with people like you from the field, exchange, agree and disagree. We heard a lot about the word trust today, a lot about the emotions, but we also heard a lot about economic diplomacy and venture, and also this thing that now is stuck in my head, to keep the eyes on the ball. As a football fan, you hear that, but this was a different, so interesting to think about. But I would absolutely encourage also the audience, but you too, to exchange, and I think this is exactly what Ulpiana is meant, and I'm very, again, not only honored to be here, but honored to be part of this amazing organization. Thank you for coming all the way here, for sharing your thoughts and your ideas, and hope to catch up as soon as possible. Thank you.
And thank you.
And we're on time. 10 minutes late, exactly on time.